do this all day. A bunch of a-holes. Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Hello and welcome to the Infinity Saga and Beyond, an MCU fan podcast. Probably need a shorter name for that. My name is Jordan Wiegand, and with me today is Jack C. Prasad, like always, to talk some What If.
Hello, I'm very excited about this episode because to people who have been listening for the entire run of this series, you know that Doctor Strange is my second favorite MCU character. We already got a peek at my first favorite in the episode before in Ant-Man or Hank Pym.
Yeah, you got the first mantle, right?
Exactly, the first mantle.
Your favorite is probably Scott, not...
Oh, yeah, Scott Lang,
yeah,
especially after reading the comics. Yeah, Scott Lang is far better, yeah.
I always find it so... We're already going off tangent. I was going to say, I always find it so interesting with the mantle passing because I feel like Marvel doesn't have it as much as like DC, right? Where like with DC, you get like the Flash and you have Jay Garrick, Wally West, Barry Allen, right? And like Bart Allen and all these different Allens and Wests and everybody that ever has been a Flash. But like here, we don't get it that much. But I feel like Ant-Man, I think there's been at least 3. Right?
I think that's right. I think
Him,
it's 3.
Scott, and I'm trying to figure out who I'm missing here. But you know, I mean, we get with Captain America, I guess, right? With you know, we're now getting Steve, and we've had, I think, like other Caps like John Walker and stuff like that as well, in the comics, as well as I'm just trying to look up Ant-Man on on Wikipedia, and it keeps trying to take me to Scott Lang, and I'm like, I want to see all of the Ant-Man. Okay, Eric O'Grady is the other one.
Right, okay.
There we go. And he was really only for, it seems like this brief run of period in Marvel history. But yeah, I knew there was a third one. But you know, like I feel like Ant-Man is one of those that particularly has like the mantle passing, and I guess Spider-Man with Miles Morales, though that's kind of been retconned recently as them existing in the same universe, which they never started out in. But just interesting, you know, because like you're right, because you're like, okay, we've seen one version of my favorite character, but it's actually Scott, and there's like people with Flash that are the same way. They're like, Wally West is my favorite, or Jay Garrick is. So
yeah, speaking of different variations of favorite characters, let's get into this new episode, which I think the title, correct me if I'm wrong, is What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands?
Nailed it. That's it. Directed by Bryan Andrews, written by A.C. Bradley, originally released on September 1st on Disney Plus with a runtime of 36 minutes. The synopsis is a grief-stricken Doctor Strange uses the Eye of Agamotto, if I say that right.
Agamotto, I think.
Agamotto.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it's spelled like motto, but yeah, I think they say moto. Okay, in a dangerous effort to change the past. So let's go spoiler free, I guess, or just initial thoughts to start us off here. Jack, you posted on Twitter that this was your favorite episode, right?
Yeah, I said like the episode before was starting to get up to the level of my previous favorite, What If T'Challa Became a Star-Lord? But this one takes the cake 100% because it is, we were talking, I think, last episode when we talked about the Spider-Man trailer, how Doctor Strange hasn't really gotten any characterization or consistent characterization before. And this was great characterization for him. And I thought it was incredible. It was a nice difference in theme, I think, from the other episodes. And, you know, it was just great all around. The voice acting was good as well. And I just really enjoyed the entire run of it.
Yeah. So what I will say is last week is still my favorite, but I think this one is the objectively best that they've done. So I can appreciate this one being the best one. I really enjoyed it, but just for the murder mystery aspect of the last one and stuff, I really enjoyed that one. But this one is objectively the best one. Music, animation, voice acting was all really great. This was Benedict Cumberbatch. I remember there were some reports right before the show came out a few weeks ago. They were saying he's not going to voice him, but it was like before Disney released the full cast list. So I'm not sure where the disconnect was on that, but it did come out that he's reprising him, and he played both Doctor Strange and what they're calling Doctor Strange Supreme. That is the evil one, or as the ancient one says, misguided.
Yes.
Doctor Strange. Can we now lay to rest the Spider-Man rumors? Can we do that? Because I feel like with the way that this ends, which we'll get to, with Strange Supreme, I just want to make sure I mention this. Strange Supreme, kind of asking Uatu to, interfere, and him saying the world shouldn't pay for this. People's original thoughts were, well, this Doctor Strange that's evil is definitely going to be the one that replaces our Doctor Strange in No Way Home, and he's going to be a lot more willing to risk this stuff because he's evil. But now he already knows the consequences of messing with time and space, and if he was to replace our Doctor Strange there, would he be like, let's do it again? Right? No, I don't think so. I think what we're seeing is with the No Way Home one is it is our Doctor Strange, and he's just arrogant, and he thinks he can do it, which is characterized in this episode as well. And I think that we can put to rest the thought that this is not our Doctor Strange in No Way Home. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's pretty conclusive that it can't be, because I already said before that there's no way, because Doctor Strange is arrogant at a lot of points in his own movie, in Infinity War, not as much in Endgame, but he is not this this perfect saint who always follows the rules of what should be done. He is very egotistical. This has to be our Doctor Strange. And plus, given how this episode ends, the evil Doctor Strange, or Strange Supreme, literally has no way home. Yeah, if you see what I did there.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I know that we see him in commercials for, I think, another one. So I think he does get out of this somehow. But I think that's where we'll get more into the Watcher stuff that we can theorize on at the end of the episode. But and I think this was Rachel McAdams as well.
It was. Yep.
It was.
I think this is as far as I can think of, this is the cast that has most of the original voice actors, because you've got Tilda Swinton in there. Yeah. You've got Rachel McAdams. You've got Benedict Cumberbatch. I mean, this was also
Benedict Wong.
Yeah, right. I mean, you have everyone. Right. Yeah. I mean,
know who else it has? Leslie Bibb. Do you know what role she is? Christine Everhart.
Yeah, from Iron Man 2, right? Iron Man 2.
She's from Iron Man 2, and she's also, they did this online series or something leading up to one of the movies where she was on the news broadcast. What movie was that for? But they did this whole build up for WHIH, which is the channel she's on. I think it was building up to Civil War, maybe, that they did this. It was from July 2015 to May 2016.
That seems like Civil War.
Leading. So it was at the end of. Oh, the first season was building up to Ant-Man marketing, and then the second season of Newsfront, WHIH, was for Civil War.
Yeah. Okay.
And yes, it stars Christine Everhart, Leslie Bibb. So right there, she's done more than just the Iron Man thing. So I saw her name in the credits, and I was like, that's interesting, and I didn't think much of it. And then the second time I watched it, because I watched this one twice, it's when he leaves Christine at the apartment, I guess,
right,
and doesn't go pick her up, and she still dies. It's her giving the broadcast saying who passed away. So Just a little interesting, fun little thing, and how much they think this stuff out.
Yeah.
Mind blowing. All right, so I guess let's take it beat by beat here. The plot: Doctor Strange and Christine are driving to the dinner party that his award show, and they're talking, and that's when it opens up with her walking out, and we see that scene a few times, and it's kind of like what's a movie that has something like, it's almost like
a Groundhog Day type thing.
Groundhog Day, or even like Back to the Future, when you see a certain scene and you know it's going to come back up again, and it does, and you're like, oh, now we're seeing it again, type of thing. That's what what it kind of seems like. And so we'll see her, come out of focus, into focus, out of the doors quite a bit here. But what is the Nexus event here? Is it him loving her more, or just her saying yes to the party? Because she does ask her to go.
Yeah, I mean, in the original Doctor Strange, so the movie itself, you might remember that before Strange is going to the event that leaves his hands destroyed, he asks Christine to go to this event with him, in which she says, "No, you're arrogant. No." And this time they kind of allude to that she's not like fully in this because she's like super into him or anything. She literally says, "I'm just here because you promised me creme brulee."
Yeah.
So that's the Nexus event. It's her deciding to go to this award event instead of him going himself.
Because when he is reliving it, and he starts being a little bit more open about how he feels about her, she has this 180 of like, well, maybe it will be a really great night. Like, she likes him, and she is trying to have that, but he never gives her that in the original Doctor Strange. He never lets down that guard or lets her know how he actually feels. And when he's doing that in this, she lets that guard down. So do you think the Doctor Strange we met in the regular Sacred Timeline would have reacted the way that he did? Because I think some people were like, well, he obviously didn't care about Christine that much if he's acting like that. Why is he so like trying to reverse it?
I think it has to do with the fact that before in the original Doctor Strange, she really like blows him off and like pretty much tells him off and all this kind of stuff. And even like from then on until he comes back as Doctor Strange to like, after he gets stabbed, I believe it is.
It's when they're in the hospital.
Right. So he like, she really tells him off in that event. But in this one, I feel like he thinks he's personally responsible in some way because, he was in the car driving and she ends up dying from this. But that's what ends up happening. They're going to this event. They're talking. He tries to do the maneuver around the truck like he does in his movie, but he's on the phone in his movie, which is not a factor present in this one. But he tries to get there. Car comes. You think it's going to hit him, but he actually avoids that one. And I was like, oh, it's fine.
That tricked me out.
It tricked me out. And then another car comes in from behind, and they spin off. And the car lands in the exact same position as it does in the movie, which was, those parallels that we're used to by now in the What If series. But and then we see him come to a little bit. He it looks like he blacks out for a little bit, and he looks over, and Christine is dead. And and then we see the same beats from Doctor Strange play out, where he goes to learn the mystic arts instead of to fix his hands out of grief, it seems this time, and then defeats Dormammu, and all of that still occurs.
Yeah, pretty much the first movie is unchanged, except for instead of his hands, he loses Christine, and he goes for a different reason. But then the rest of the movie plays out the same, and when he's done and he's sitting in his chair and Wong is talking to him on the 2-year anniversary of her death, does he actually decide he's going to try to fix it? So it is interesting because that it would take him that long, because I'm not sure if he got sidetracked by the actual cause of what they're supposed to be doing, because he went there to learn to save her pretty much, I feel like, right?
Yeah, I think
then
so.
Goes through the whole thing, and I think Doctor Strange itself takes place over maybe 6 months to a year. So he's still waiting almost another year after he beats Dormammu, I think, to then, if I have the timeline right, to then go again and decide, you know what? I actually am going to use the powers I learned. Which I thought was interesting. It took him that long, if that's the case. So I think he may have actually, really bought into what the Ancient One and what the calls that they were doing was. He learns that the eye can manipulate time. It has the time stone, obviously, but he's been warned to do so after reality. This time is when he actually does. He makes repeated attempts to save Christine, and he fails every time. And this is probably the best part of the episode, I feel like. The part where I really felt bad for Doctor Strange. Just having to see it over and over again. I think Benedict's acting was really good too. I love when he's saying like what you said, realize Christine's like, oh no, Christine, like acting there I thought was really great. And watching this, I forget it's a cartoon. Particularly this episode, like that looks like Benedict Cumberbatch, and I'm watching it and I'm just like, this is Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like a half hour. Like it felt like something that could have been a movie itself.
It really did. And it's just you really, like you said, you really feel Strange's pain during this scene, because you just see him try and make repeated attempts to make it different. So he does the same thing before, thinking that it'll be fine. He takes a different route, and they get literally hit T-bone from the side. Yeah, T-bone. Yeah. That's the word I'm looking for, by a semi. He tries to say, oh, we'll just stay in, or order pizza. And they go to order pizza, and she gets shot by some random guy. That.
Or how about when they actually go and she dies of a heart attack?
Yeah.
What is actually,
that? Yeah. And I think it's it's just crazy, because after each of these, you think it'll be there's got to be at least one that will be okay. And I think the last one where he finally gives up, she drives, because she just sees him looking nervous, and same result still happens. And
he survives still.
Yeah, he still survives.
He's in the passenger seat.
Exactly. So it just nails home it really nails home the part, because the next thing that happens is the Ancient One kind of appears and says, you can't reverse this. This is an absolute point in time, which is a new time travel-ish term that Marvel is introducing into the MCU, I suppose, which is, I have a feeling, going to be very important in the future.
Yeah, we'll see.
So
let's break that down for people, though, because people have heard of Nexus points, right? In Loki, we've heard of absolute points in this, and the way the Ancient One describes this is, it is a fixed point in this timeline. So it is in this universe that it is a fixed point. So I guess in each of these what if universes, and any universes out there, each of them have an absolute point that cannot be changed, that's different from the Nexus event that has split the universe. So want to make sure people are aware of that. They're two different things. Like Jack said, new term here. So kind of like Final Destination, I guess, right? It's your time. It's Christine's time. And in this universe, she has to die, because that's what sets Doctor Strange on his path. If we were going to look at Doctor Strange's absolute point, I'm not sure if this will be the same absolute point in the sacred timeline, but the absolute point to get Strange where he needed to be in our universe was still the accident, but losing his hands, because his ego could not take not being able to work with his hands and be the neurosurgeon that he is. So just two different things. I'm not sure if every character has a different absolute point, or is this universe really just focused around Christine dying, and maybe another universe is the fixed point of Cap taking the serum is an absolute point. You know, like there's different absolute points maybe for each universe, or is it different just because Doctor Strange led him to that path? It's kind of a up in the air thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, after we're done with the synopsis and we talk a bit more about theorizing, remind me about absolute points, because I do have a theory relating to those. So I've just got to remember to talk about that after this.
Yeah. So so he refuses to listen. The Ancient One, kind of what we'll learn is splitting the timeline in two using the dark dimension powers, right? One where Strange Supreme exists and goes forward at this moment, and then one where Strange is still sitting in that chair before he decides to go save Christine and decides against it. And then we end up with, I don't know how this works. This is something that this is just very comic booky, I guess. I'm not sure how this actually works, where you have the same universe but two timelines in it, when we've been so used to different timelines in different universes. So it's a little confusing, I think, for general audiences. I'm not sure if they'll catch on to it, but it made for a cool ending, I guess. So she tries to stop him, and we don't know about this split yet. So, you know, he uses the eye to escape, and he goes to find the lost library of Cagliostro, which I think he mentioned to her as well when he said, there has to be a way. And she says no. And he's like, well, there's been books lost to time. There's been libraries lost to time. And that's what this is, a library called the Library of Cagliostro, where he meets the librarian Obang. And he starts looking and reading a whole bunch of books there. What'd you think of Obang, by the way?
Well, from when I told you that I got that Marvel Unlimited app, I used the free trial period to pretty much read as many Doctor Strange comics as possible. And I noticed his name popping up quite a bit. He's a very magical fellow, I guess you could say, in the Marvel universe. And he is usually very important whenever there's something mystical in the air, I suppose you could say. And I thought he was an interesting enough character for this, a bit underutilized. I think they could have done more with him, but because they kind of just use him as a vehicle to tell that there's a passage of time, really, towards the end. But otherwise, I thought it was interesting that they introduced him at least to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, potentially setting him up for maybe Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Maybe that would be nice. But I also wanted to mention the Library of Cagliostro part. In the original Doctor Strange, the book that he uses to learn about time manipulation is the Book of Cagliostro. So it's kind of a callback to that. That it's a smallish detail though that's very easy to miss though, I suppose. But yeah.
And I guess one thing too is, I'm not sure if you just mentioned, I was just reading about Obang. I looked him up because I'm not familiar with Obang before this. And when I looked him up, it took me to Cagliostro. And on Marvel Comics, it says Cagliostro, parenthesis, Obang, parenthesis, Earth 616. So this is the comic book main one. His first appearance was in 1973 in Dracula Lives, Volume 2, Issue 1. But so they are one and the same, possibly. It says name Obang, possibly. So Obang is maybe in this universe still Cagliostro, or maybe he's just the bookkeeper, librarian, like he says. But just something interesting to think about there, that he could have been pulling the old Wizard of Oz on him, I guess, right? Yeah, we get the passage of time because what happens is Doctor Strange starts deciding he needs to eat and feed on the souls, I guess, of other mystical creatures. And the first one he decides to go after is the Travelocity gnome. And he is going to call upon the gnome here and just absorb it, which was very very disturbing scenes here as he absorbs all of these monsters.
But not the bug, because he draws the line at bugs. So
yes, but gnomes, which are almost people, is fine.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But big blue beetle or bug type thing, no thank you.
Takes the cape though.
Yeah, takes the cape, and that's why we get him looking with a different cape. That was interesting. But yeah, so we get to the passage of time where it's just kind of like going over and over and over, and we have, Obang is now old and dying. One thing I thought that was cool too, with just the animation, is anytime he absorbed one of those magical creatures, how like you would see the magical creature and then like his features in it as he's like absorbing it, and then like he'd become normal again. Yeah,
the animation in this was just incredible, really. Like literally every scene was just filled with awesome details and just perfect animation, really.
Oh yeah, I loved. I mean, I know people were complaining originally before What If started. Like, I remember seeing the first frame of Captain Carter, like on D23, whatever year it was, and I was like, "Oh, this looks really great." And people were complaining then. I was like, "It's a cartoon, like it's gonna look good." I mean, like, were they expecting, like the Frozen look, or like?
That I would be mad if it was the Frozen look, but
this looks more like something that would fit in the Marvel.
It looks like it's taken straight out of the comic books, almost. It really does.
Exactly. So yeah, Obeng dies, and actually Strange tries to say, "I can keep you alive, right? I can do whatever." At this point, he's like, "No, death is still." He says, like, death is still part of the plan. Right, for people like us, which I thought was interesting, because that might
bit of foreshadow.
Yeah, I don't know if it gets to Strange the way he wants it to, but so the Ancient One splits the timeline in two, like I said. So you have the one where it's going to become Strange Supreme, which is the one devouring everything, and the other one who is accepting Christine had died. And at this point, she finds the one who is the good Strange, or the closest to our version of Strange, and is trying to recruit him to fight or defeat Strange Supreme, and saying that the only one who can defeat him is you. And I thought that's the way this episode was going to go. Maybe I was just a little naive here. But Doctor Strange loses to Strange Supreme in the fight that we'll talk about here, and it was kind of shocking, honestly. Were you at all surprised that Doctor Strange fell to Strange Supreme?
A little bit, but I think kind of the point that did it for me was throughout this fight, it looks like Strange has the upper hand. The one moment though is the Cloak of Levitation. There's an awesome scene in this fight sequence where the two cloaks literally fight each other. Great animation throughout that entire part. And, they fight each other, and Strange is getting like pretty much his butt kicked in by Strange Supreme. And the Cloak of Levitation kind of captures Strange Supreme's arms. Yeah. And he just rips it in half. And at that point I was like, I think it might be over, because he has no backup anymore. And I saw, like, every this is an important detail. Before he goes to fight Strange, he gets a guardian spell put on him. And this guardian spell is very slowly but surely wearing off. Yeah. And when he rips that cloak, it's kind of I kind of was like, yeah, he's gonna win. He wants this too badly, really. Like, he will do whatever it takes, and he really does. So,
yeah, he took the Imagine Dragons song to heart there, and Captain America's speech, and he's like, whatever it takes, and I'm going to defeat this version of myself. And he does, and he, like you said, so one thing I thought was interesting was the way that they were showing the universe falling apart with, like, reverse sludge. I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like a reverse, if you're, like, inking a paint, like using ink or on a pen or something. It was like the reverse of that, where it's instead of leaving it on the page, it's like coming off the page.
What it reminded me of, I'm not sure if you've ever played this game, but the video game Epic Mickey.
Yeah, it did.
That's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of the thinner in that game, like how like you would like dissolve parts of enemies in that game, and like that's what it looked like, almost like, you know, they were thinning away the world in that. But yeah, and I think it's almost like, you know, since the Ancient One used that dark dimension power to do that, I wonder if, because in Loki they say before the TVA, like these timelines fought each other, if that's like the timelines like fighting against each other and trying to reconcile each other, and so like it's
I don't
one
know.
timeline's devouring the other or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I don't know if this is the same in the sense of, so I think the way that they use their magic splitting stuff is different from what we've seen. As you know, like the way that Doctor Strange used time travel is different than the quantum realm time travel. So I think there might be different rules, different consequences, and everything. Like, I think what he's doing, like as we see with like the apple and everything in the movie and in this episode, is he just reverses it. So I guess all those times that he's doing it, he's actually just reversing it, and it's not creating a new path. But I still don't get then really how she's splitting these two timelines into the same universe, that the one would affect the other. So I think it's going to be different than the TVA style, you know, than that. I think it's different than that, but I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if the writers know how they did this. I think they just wanted to do it, and that's fine. It worked story wise, but you know, I think some people look into some of this stuff a little too much, and they're like, well, you know, I saw people already saying still that, oh, what? Wait until this Doctor Strange finds out that Christine's still alive in our universe, and he's replacing her. He's replacing him in Multiverse of Madness, and I'm like, all right, we might see him in Multiverse of Madness, but I don't know if I don't know. I think for all the people that thought Mephisto was going to be in WandaVision, they haven't learned. They have not learned at all.
No, they haven't. I learned from that because I was fully on board with that. Like I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be awesome, and I was reading up on it and everything. Well, and then it never happened. So
the only time I really started thinking that is if anybody goes back and listens to this, Casey and I broke it down, and I would say like, okay, with the devil in the details and everything, I'm like, okay, maybe this is referring to Mephisto. They want the children. Mephisto does stuff with her children. That makes sense. But by the time you get to like episode 7, 8, or 9 out of WandaVision, you know, you have like one or two left. I'm like, we can't introduce Mephisto right now. It makes no sense. And people were kind of doing, you know, we already see it with the Spider-Man trailer, and we'll see it until the end of time, I guess. But
yeah, it's inevitable. It's
like Thanos. Yeah,
death, taxes, and Mephisto theories.
So they do this whole fight. Doctor Strange, the good one, loses to Strange Supreme, who ends up absorbing him. And he uses the enhanced powers, now that he's absorbed them and became whole again, to reverse Christine's death. And this creates a paradox and ends up collapsing the universe. And Christine starts dying, but she starts sludging out, whatever you want to call it. And the first time she lays eyes on Doctor Strange, he looks like Goliath from Gargoyles. You know, he's huge. He looks, we're like Beast from Beauty and the Beast. You know, he's like completely different looking. She has no idea who this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of just a disgusting amalgamation of just creatures. It's
all the things he ate.
It's just disgusting.
Now he's able to get control of it, and like he's able to eventually change himself back to Strange Supreme, and she's like, "Oh, Steven," you know, and then they're like chatting away, and then he's like trying to save the universe. He's doing something with his hands. We don't really know what he's trying to do. He's trying to stop the world from collapsing.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like what he did in like that fight against Thanos on, I think it's is it Vormir that they I can't remember.
They were on Titan.
Titan.
Yeah.
Right, my bad. But he kind of like uses a shield to try and shield the part of the universe that they're in to kind of like push it out.
Yeah.
So that's what I think he's doing. But yeah, so.
And we get the Watcher. And I want to say, I forgot to say this last week. And then I was listening to another podcast that mentioned this. And I was like, oh, I meant to mention this. But just, like the scenes where we just see the Watcher in the scenery is beautiful. Last week, and I've been trying to find screenshots of it to share on the Twitter, but I can't find them. But last week, when Coulson is driving through Nevada and you see him just like in the background as the car is driving through, and it just looks beautiful. And the best one I thought was when he's watching over the Golden Gate Bridge while they're going to the graveyard. That was really nice. And in this episode, we saw him. There you go. We saw him in the beginning of the episode in the New York skyline. And then now we're seeing him just watching this part unfold. And we forgot to mention this. When he's eating or absorbing the creatures, the Watcher's watching then, and he says, I could interfere, but I'm not supposed to, and I doubt he would listen anyway. And Strange Supreme actually hears him and says, who is that?
Yeah.
And this time he actually sees him as well, and he says, I've been seeing you. I've
read about you. Yeah.
I've read about you. You can make a change. They shouldn't pay. The world shouldn't pay for my mistake. And the Watcher, Uatu, is pretty much like, you're right. They shouldn't. But I can't interfere. And then we have Christine's last words. The last words that Strange Supreme has to hear from her, instead of about creme brulee or going down like Price is Right, is instead, what did you do? Which is heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then she dies, and Strange is mumbling that he's so sorry. Not just to her, but to everyone, as now he exists in this little like pocket dimension, this little mirror dimension that he's surviving in right now, in the middle of nothing. And we get the end line here from Uatu that is saying that one life can destroy the universe.
Yeah. And yeah, that ending is just like heartbreaking, really, because you hear him just like saying like, no, I'm so sorry, and like you like, as arrogant as he was, not listening to anything, you still feel for him, because it's Icarus, really. That's what it is. He flew way too close to the sun, and he got burned hard for it. And it shows like we always knew that Doctor Strange was willing to go to like great lengths to do whatever it took to fix whatever he perceived to be wrong.
He sacrificed himself to save the universe
Exactly.
by knowing that if he gave up the time stone, the one thing he said he would never give up, that it would lead eventually to the fall of Thanos.
Yeah, so like we see all of this kind of stuff, and we see just how far he's willing to go to perceive what's wrong. And I wonder if like it kind of ties into the fact like he's a surgeon, he tries to help people and tries to fix things, all of that kind of things. He literally, like at the beginning of this episode, they'd say he did basically the impossible. He replaced half of a brain, really. That like he did the impossible. So all of that. It just shows, and that's what I'm talking about with the characterization.
And he did the impossible as well, right? They kept telling, like you said, he did the impossible, the brain thing, but the Ancient One kept saying that reversing this stuff is impossible, and he actually did it. But what did it cost? It's the Gamora meme with Thanos. What did it cost? It cost everything. The whole universe is now collapsing, and this shows, I think, why I still believe that this is not going to be a turn for our Doctor Strange to be evil, or why this one is replacing him, is because he learned by the end of it. He said he is sorry. He realizes he messed up, and it shows that the Ancient One was correct, right? He was just misguided. Because Doctor Strange even asks, an evil version of me? And she says, no, misguided. And he was. He said, I didn't know it would do all of, like, I didn't think that it would do all this. And the reason why he thought that is because he thought that he would be able to do it.
Yep. So it's the best characterization we've gotten of Strange to in the MCU, and that's fantastic. Like we see him willing to do the impossible no matter what. And I think it shows that, Doctor Strange as a whole is not like your typical like perfect person who can do no wrong. He is your pretty much everyday hero. He is someone who clearly has flaws that he tries to do his best, but is very misguided often in the ways he does it because of the reasons he does it. It's like Tony Stark, how he has flaws in why he does things, like the Sokovia Accords, for example, or building Ultron. And it shows that Strange is like these guys. Like he is the same way. He is not like this Infinity War version of him where he can see into the future. He everything is completely planned out and in front of him. He knows exactly what to do. And I think that's the best characterization they've given Strange.
Yeah, I think the reason people are so confused too is like you said, in Infinity War, he pretty much knows what needs to happen and able to win. And he's banking on winning that. So he's still even arrogant there that, okay, there's one chance. I'm banking on that one chance out of, 14 million that we're going to get this right here. And I'm going to give up the stone because I think that's what's going to help. And I think that matches with what I'm helping Peter. This kid's helped me a lot. This kid saved me in Infinity War. He shouldn't have had his identity out. I think this will overall help me and him and the Avengers as a whole. That I can sacrifice a little bit of something going wrong. Yeah. It's the same thing because yes, there's one chance out of that. Otherwise, let's say that there was, he gives up the stone, right, in Infinity War, and they still lose, and they don't come back and win, then he just let Thanos have everything, right? Because there's probably a version where that happened. So, he is playing kind of fast and loose with the structures of stuff at all times because that's what his job is entailing at this point. And in this case, I read online, I think the way that they explained this was, the reason why he went so far into this compared to our Doctor Strange is because grief was the bigger motivator than his arrogance. So in our universe, it's ego, not the planet, arrogance that is causing him to say, I need my hands back because they're what makes me, right? Like I make my living with these. They're what made me special. I need them to live. While in this, it was Christine, and he got so grief-stricken, and like you said, probably blaming himself. He wasn't blaming himself for the car accident. In our version, he's probably not blaming himself for that. So he's blaming himself for her death in this version because he was driving, like you said, and he led to her death. And that caused more grief that he continued to swallow himself down in here, and that he even lost himself in all of this. And I'm guessing too, it could be because of her splitting the two in half, that maybe he was only half of himself. He really fell in even deeper.
Maybe, yeah.
So I think we need to see this ending because it raises the stakes. It shows us the stakes. Uatu is not even going to interfere at the sake of this universe. We know that Uatu does interfere in the comics at times. What will it take to get him to interfere if he won't interfere in this two timelines, one universe collapsing? Is it multiple universes collapsing? Is he the one that puts together these heroes of the multiverse, the guardians of the multiverse that is all over the marketing on some of the stuff where, we see the circle of the, T'Challa Star-Lord and Thanos Gamora and all that? Like, what is it that is making that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this sets up a good sort of precedent almost for the MCU going forward, and shows, the stakes have to be really, really, really high for Uatu to interfere. So I'm hoping, I think it's Jeffrey Wright who voices Uatu in this, but I hope we see him in the MCU, come back at like maybe the end of this phase or something to warn about, the next big evil that's coming up, because I think that would fit in really well with the overall flow of the MCU.
Yeah, I don't think you hire Jeffrey Wright to just be a voice. I think you're going to have him at some point in here, and anytime that they want to show him, they can, because they even get some of his features right on him. Like they've incorporated some of his look into him. So I think that's what they'll do. So you said you had a theory about the absolute points.
I do, and it relates to Spider-Man No Way Home, in that, assuming this happens, this is not our Strange that this happens to, this what if moment. He doesn't know about absolute points. So it's a little bit of dramatic irony in there, like that, he doesn't know about absolute points, but maybe Spider-Man's identity being revealed, maybe that's an absolute point, and that's what leads to all of this stuff happening. It's a pretty far out there theory, I think, because we've seen how powerful it can be if you try and reverse this absolute point. But, I wonder if it has something to do with that. And I'm not going to put too much weight into this theory, because I feel like there are a lot of holes that you can poke in this. But, I think
don't want the Ralph Boner effect.
No, I don't want that. So I think it's possible that this is what it is. So like they're introducing this to us through what if, the concept of absolute points, and then that's what happens in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, that's we'll table it, right? We'll see how that happens. I think if we see absolute points, we will probably see them in Multiverse of Madness. I think more so than No Way Home. That would be my speculation. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see how it goes. I know Kevin Feige was very involved with this episode, is what's been kind of in the press and stuff. So you never know what that means. It could just mean, it could just be something people say, or it could be a hint of stuff to come.
Yeah. I mean, also, I'm not sure if this was in your plan for what to talk about, but there's a lot of Easter eggs that I thought were really awesome, or maybe small details in this episode that I think are cool to talk about, because one thing in once Strange Supreme, I guess not at that point, but the alternate version of Strange, is at the Library of Cagliostro. He takes on that tentacle monster that we see from What If Episode 1, and he loses, and he's kind of like brought back to by Obane, and he says, these creatures, they're not to be bargained with. And, I was like, it's kind of a play, like, he bargained with Dormammu. So it's kind of like a play like that. He's bargained with them before. So that's something that I noticed. I also noticed that when he merged, the two versions of Strange merged together, the magic changed from a green to a red, which, again, maybe a far out there theory, but it looks almost like Wanda's chaos magic, because she has that kind of, that chaos magic. It's red in the MCU, it seems like. So maybe trying to reverse his absolute point is chaos magic, and maybe like you were saying, maybe that comes into play in Multiverse of Madness as well. So
yeah, do we actually think the Hydra Monster is the same guy? It does look similar, but I'm just not sure if. I guess we'll see. Yeah,
I'm not sure. I don't think it's like confirmed or anything, but I think that's like they look very similar. So yeah, I guess like it. I guess there could be technically infinite tentacle monsters out in the MCU and like out in alternate realities or wherever he's pulling these creatures from.
Yeah, there's a market for that.
Yeah, so I'm sure it could be a different one. Maybe it's that tentacle monster's brother. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a ton of those little fun details in here that I just wanted to point out some of them.
Yeah, no, that's fun. Really excited to see where the show goes from here. We don't know anything about episode 5.
Yeah.
I think they released a clip of this episode, I think on Tuesday, and the posters on Monday or Sunday. So we'll probably know something at the beginning of next week. Kind of like what the plot line is going to be or what the what if scenario is.
Yeah.
Which I think is fun. I think them kind of giving us that like a day or two ahead of time is fun because you're like able to speculate of, oh, it's this. Okay, what would that mean?
Yeah.
I saw somebody post a really smart comment on Twitter about this title. They said that, he would be dead right away, because he'd be losing his heart.
That's what I was confused about at first, actually, when I saw the title without reading the synopsis at first, because I was like, what? And at first I was like, so is this like the Strange that we see advertised? Is he like, like this heartless being? Is that why he looks like this? But yeah, it made more sense as it went on. But I'm also really excited for the future episodes of What If, because this kind of sets a precedent that Uatu is out there. He's not just this omniscient or omnipotent, whatever. He's not.
Some
he's
literary
not,
term.
Some,
yeah,
some
it's
literary
not just
term.
that.
Yeah, he's not a narrator that just doesn't interact. He's not completely outside of the story and of this, which I think is a very interesting precedent. And I'm hoping that he kind of comes back in and like has that sort of dialogue with one of the main characters again, because I thought that made for a really kind of twist at the end of this episode, which I really enjoyed. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, I guess that's it for What If episode 4. Are you seeing Shang-Chi at all this holiday?
I am hoping to. I have not had it. I've not gotten a ticket yet because this weekend is actually the Minnesota State Fair, which is a huge like tradition, and I'm going to that first. So I will see what my schedule looks like after that. But I'm really excited to see Shang-Chi eventually. I'd imagine within the first 2 weeks of it being out. So no spoilers.
Yeah, I'm going Friday. So we recorded this on a Thursday. Got my tickets. Got actually the last 2 that were next to each other.
Wow.
In my theater for my 8:00 showing. So I was very excited about that.
Nice.
I was like, oh, good thing I decided to buy them right now. So I think this movie will do well box office wise. Because
I hope so.
I did not have as much problem finding seats for other movies recently. So I think that this will be very good. And I think that they'll continue and release hopefully Eternals and Spider-Man No Way Home this year specifically.
Yep.
That's the goal, to see those 2 this year so we can actually start turning the page on the MCU, because these movies have kind of been known about for so long.
Yeah, since like 2018, 2019, really. A lot of these. Yeah.
I mean, so it was funny. Somebody pointed this out on the website, on Reddit or Twitter or something, but Paramount just pushed Top Gun Maverick back again from this summer or this fall to next summer. And that is like the millionth time it's been pushed back. That it was originally scheduled for 2019 and got pushed to 2020 just for like other reasons, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then once it got in 2020, June or whatever, it kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And the trailer, by the time this movie comes out next year, is going to be about 3 years old, I think somebody said, which is crazy because usually that's like a sequel coming out around.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at right now. So to finally I was just so happy when we got to see Black Widow and be able to turn the page on that, because I was like, that's been a year and a half of trailers. Let's just move on. Like, I feel like every time I go to the movie theaters, I'm seeing the same trailers from before COVID because they haven't been able to release the movies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, here we go. Get to watch this trailer again, which means, unfortunately, for the next 6 months, I'm going to have to see more Top Gun Maverick trailers, which I feel like I've seen a lot.
Nice.
But yeah, going to go see Shang-Chi. I guess I'll do I might have to do a spoiler review by myself because I'm not sure, who's able to go to theaters and stuff. So it might be a solo effort there. But yeah, I'll probably do like a spoiler-free like first 10 minutes and then probably go into spoilers. But that'll be the next episode on the feed, and then we'll get into What If episode 5. So Jack, where can people follow you?
At JCPrasad16 on Twitter is the place to follow me. I've been posting a lot about about this episode of What If because it's been really exciting. You can also follow at Final Third Show, my soccer podcast. That's been doing really well recently. So if you're interested in some soccer, be sure to check that out as well.
Yeah, and you can follow the Marvel show here, To the Infinity Saga and Beyond, on Twitter at TO Infinity Saga, Facebook.com/Infinity Saga Beyond, or email marvelplusrecaps@gmail.com. So thanks for hanging out, and we will catch you all next time.